why the tremors that were felt in Delhi today are a wake-up call. How prone is Delhi, and is Delhi actually ready if a big earthquake hits it? Probably today's morning, when you were having breakfast or leaving for work or going to college, tremors were felt. And specifically, this happened in the regions of Delhi NCR. Now, this earthquake and the tremors are something that we frequently see in Delhi NCR region, but this one is like a wake-up call. Why is this a wake-up call? An earthquake of 4.4 magnitude has sent such tremors. What if a big one hits our capital? Is Delhi actually vulnerable to big earthquakes, and what are the reasons behind it? And also, is Delhi ready for it? Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and today we are going to talk about our quake-prone capital and understand if it is ready, and if it's not, what can be done about it. So beginning with the news that today on July 10th around 9 am, earthquake tremors were felt, and the magnitude here has been outlined to be 4.4 on the Richter scale. Now, this magnitude is definitely of not a very severe earthquake, but the tremors were felt and there was swaying of high-rise buildings. If we talk about the epicenter of this particular earthquake, it comes from Jhajjar, Haryana, which is not very far away from Delhi. It is only like 15 kilometers away from the western side of Delhi. And another notable thing that came out was that the depth of the epicenter was merely 10 kilometers, which is unusually shallow. Now, we have to understand when we talk about the location of the epicenter, it lies very close to the New Delhi, and Haryana is an adjoining region. But if you look at this whole region, you have to understand that it is highly populated. That means a lot of lives are at risk if a big one hits this region. Now that we have understood what exactly happened, now I have a question for you here, that I said 4.4 on the Richter scale. So that basically measures the magnitude of earthquake. Is there any other scale which is used to understand the intensity of earthquake? Now going back to the topic, when we talk about this particular earthquake, the tremors were felt across the Delhi NCR region, including Ghaziabad, Gurugram, Noida. However, thankfully there have been no casualties, but it has triggered mass evacuations which took place, and there is a huge buzz related to it that alarm was not needed to wake up today. But this itself is an alarm that we need to understand if Delhi is ready for such quakes or bigger quakes in future. Now, when we talk about this particular earthquake, there was a significant difference that we saw. The one I pointed out was the depth that was only 10 kilometers. Even though we are talking about the shallowness, we have to understand why this low magnitude earthquake becomes important for us to understand. So basically, if we are talking about shallow depth, here we have to understand the shallower the depth is, there you will see the stronger surface shaking. So just to explain you, if this is the surface and the epicenter is, the more it is closer, the more impact it will have on the surface. Furthermore, the amplification was seen because of the alluvial soil which is present in Yamuna floodplains, and also the dense high-rise buildings that we see all around us. There was a lot of swaying because of the tremors which was seen. Now, here we have to always identify from the perspective of exam also that what is the difference between shallow earthquakes or deep-seated epicenter earthquakes. What are the differences they will have, and then of course you go into the details of primary waves, secondary waves, but we also have to connect it to the preparedness when we are talking about disaster management part, as well as the reasons. So when we have understood that this was a shallow depth earthquake, but still a significant one which created such huge tremors, it brings us to the next question, that why our capital is so seismically active and what makes it so vulnerable. So there are 4 key points associated with it which make us understand that Delhi NCR region is highly seismic. So the first thing that you need to understand here if we look at the classification of seismic zones, this classification is given by BIS, that is Bureau of Indian Standards, and it divides whole of the geography into 4 zones. Then we have zone 2, zone 3, zone 4 and zone 5. So when we talk about zone 5 is the highly active and where the seismic activity is rapid. Zone 4 is comparatively less prone to seismic activities and earthquakes. So if we talk about Delhi, it falls in seismic zone 4, which is a high damage risk zone. Now that is not the only reason, but when we talk about Delhi as the location itself, if you will see this particular region, it wholly lies in zone 4, which is put in the darker yellow color, but at the same time it lies in close proximity to zone 5. Now if we talk about the Himalayan zone, which is highly active seismic belt, the Delhi's proximity to it further amplifies that. So the first reason is the zone classification or the location of Delhi that we see, which makes it prone because of the geological phenomena itself. Now, just to confirm this, if we look at the historical data as well, we will find that there have been almost 500 tremors that have been seen in 30 years. So if you're a person who is living in the capital city, you will know that in a year, on an average, you get to see 3 to 4 earthquakes where mass evacuations, people are getting out of the buildings. Thankfully, there hasn't been a disastrous one in the recent time. And if we talk about magnitude 6+ earthquakes, if we are talking about the severe ones, they will also have been recorded, which have been in and around the region. However, thankfully, in the just recent past, such severe earthquakes, if you have to talk about, there was a Nepal epicenter earthquake, which again wreaked havoc in that particular country, but only tremors came down to Delhi. Now, this basically points that the location is such and the historical data also proves the seismic activity that we see in our region. Now, apart from that, there is another reason here that there are certain key fault lines which are present in and around Delhi. So, if we talk about Delhi, we can see multiple fault lines around it. For example, if you see Mathura fault, it is right here. So these are subsurface faults which are present. Other than that, if you find Delhi Haridwar ridge is present, and there are certain faults which are subsurface faults. So we have Delhi Haridwar ridge, then we have Mahendragarh Dehradun, Muradabad fault is close, and then we also have the Great Boundary Fault associated with Himalayan range. So multiple faults can be seen around Delhi. Furthermore, if you look at the dots which have been put here and there, so basically they show the magnitude of earthquake which have occurred in history, but they have the magnitude of less than 7. However, more than 7, you cannot find presence here, but if you go beyond our boundaries, you can find earthquakes with higher magnitude than 7. So it is also these faults that are present which contribute to the further vulnerability that we see in our capital city. And these are, if you have to understand, then we can bifurcate here. These are the pretty much natural causes which are existent. But the anthropogenic causes are also not helping the situation. They are increasing the vulnerability further. So if we look at the anthropogenic causes, we are understanding the vulnerability and the risk associated is escalating, it is increasing. Now how? So if we talk about rapid urbanization, it is happening on a seismic zone. So if the population is rapidly multiplying in this region, this highly populated region becomes a risk zone. Furthermore, 75% of Delhi buildings, as per studies, you will find them that they do not follow the construction norms which are required to be earthquake resistant, and these Delhi buildings increase the risk by multiple fold. If we talk about high population density, it is present across the region, but at the same time, this population density becomes a problematic number when we are talking about especially unorthodox colonies. The number goes beyond around 1800 plus. Now, this increases the vulnerability, exposure by a greater threshold. And here we can understand that there is a contribution from the natural causes of the vulnerability as well as the anthropogenic causes too. Now that we have understood the proneness that we can see in Delhi, that is present because of the given reasons, now let us move ahead and talk about the economic and structural impact that we should be prepared for. And what are the impact that we have seen? So if we talk about the vulnerability in terms of urban areas, especially if you talk about regions like Connaught Place, Trans Yamuna and the walled city we are referring to the old Delhi region, these are the high risk zones. So if a severe earthquake hits, these will be the places where we will be seeing severe damage. Furthermore, if we go by the numbers, around 60% of the buildings, they are 20 plus year old. So if they're 20 plus year old, they are not updated as per the recent construction norms, which are not just set by BIS, HUDCO is also involved, BMTC is also involved. All these agencies are involved when we are talking about construction, but these old buildings are not updated as per the construction norms. So here the risk is also higher for them. And such buildings also lack retrofitting so that they can be changed as per the requirement of time, and an earthquake resistant design is absolutely missing. Now this increases the vulnerability in terms of urban areas, but other than that, we also see that there is economic impact that can be expected in terms of business risk as well as disruptions. So for example, if a severe earthquake hits, there will not just be a urban vulnerability we are looking at, there will be disruption of services, business and government order as well. So when we are talking about critical government offices, commercial and tech hubs which are situated, industries which are situated in Delhi NCR region, they are at risk. For example, if we talk about the recent data, this particular earthquake where the magnitude was only 4, this led to mass evacuations and this happened from the high-rise offices. So this will disrupt the daily economic cycle that we see in this particular region. Apart from that, we also have to recognize the key gaps which are still existent. For example, if we talk about the BIS code of 1893 of 2016, which is the earthquake resistant code, we see there is a very poor compliance, not just with the earth resistant code, but the construction norm itself. You will see that there are construction norms across Delhi which are being flouted. There is less consideration that it will lead to loss of life. It's not just about the economic impact or environmental impact. At the humane level, it will cause a big loss to not just them but across humanity. Other than that, there are negligible or no structural audits of commercial buildings happening, and there is no retrofitting, especially when we talk about public infrastructure that is required. So these key gaps are basically highlighting that our constructions, our structures, our infrastructure are at risk. Other than that, the economics of it is at risk, and we have the gaps in front of us which need to be filled before we have a situation in front of us which we are not able to tackle because we lagged in the preparedness part of disaster management. Now my question to you here is, which is the main agency which is responsible for disaster management at the national level, and are there any state level agencies which are ready or can help in such disasters if they occur, right? Now on this note that we have understood the impacts that could be seen, let us move and talk about the way forward. So whenever we are talking about way forward, it cannot be in a silo for a particular agency, organization or the government. It comes for all the stakeholders. So when we are talking about way forward here, for government and urban planning level, administration level, definitely there are things that need to be taken in consideration, such as better compliance to the codes which is given, structural audits that need to be mandatorily taken out, then real-time earthquake alert systems which can help the public. But at the same time, the responsibility also lies with businesses and individuals. If we are talking about business and institution, it becomes important that they have business continuity plans if such disruptions take place. There should be proper drills, drop, cover and hold in times such seismic activity is seen. So such drills raise the preparedness level, and there should be proper earthquake kits and evacuation maps should be handy, not just for business but for personal uses as well. And this is implied for the citizens as well. Now that was all from my side. Thank you so much.